Hi everyone, thanks for listening to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff and I'll be your host for the show. If you've had a Dogman encounter of your own and would like to speak with me whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmenencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to help support the show by becoming a premium member, please go to dogmenencounters.com/podcast to sign up. Memberships are only $2.99 a month. By becoming a premium member, you'll be able to download episodes onto your mobile device and listen to them commercial-free wherever you go. Also, if you'd like to check out the new Dogman Encounters t-shirt store, please go to dogmenencounters.com/store and take a look around. Buying a t-shirt or sweatshirt there is another great way to help support the show. As always, thanks for listening. Alright, let's bring on tonight's guest. Tonight's guest is Kevin. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Vic.
Well, thank you for your time. We appreciate you coming on. Kevin, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
My name's Kevin. I'm 36 years old. I live in Carter County in northeastern Tennessee. I've been married for about 18 years, have 5 children, and I'm a carpenter by trade.
Kevin, you said in the pre-interview that your Dogman problem started when you visited a certain part of a mountain that's close to where you live. What can you tell us about that place and what happened there the day that you visited it?
Well, the mountain kind of runs around, and there's a river that runs down by it. There's several creeks and little places along the river, and it's kind of wooded in behind several houses, and it runs up to a place that we call the Double Bridges here. Well, on that particular day, I was ginseng hunting, and I walked the mountain. I started up, and it started raining on me. So I'm sitting there, and I'm digging a few plants, and I kind of get a glimpse of something to my right. Out of my peripheral vision, it was up above me, and it looked black. So I'm sitting there, and I'm kind of watching everything for a minute, and everything's kind of silent. And I move up because I thought it was a bear at first. Well, as I got up the ridge a little ways, all the trails that was running across through there, the game trails, they were all just like patted down. There was no hoof prints like deer, no coyotes had been through there, nothing that you would regularly see on our mountain. Well, I get on up toward the top of the ridge, and I start getting this real uneasy feeling like something was watching me. So I thought whatever I'd seen was still lurking around there. So I kind of bared back to the left, and I hit an old logging road. On that old logging road, there was a couple places that looked pretty nice, that I thought there might be some herbs in there. So I walk on up to the top of the ridge, and there's no more game trails. After I hit the logging road, there's nothing, no sign of any kind of deer, no game trails, period, all the way to the top of the mountain. Well, I cut off and come down another holler, and I'm working that holler down through there for, an hour or so. And by that time, where it rained, I was soaking wet. So I come back out the old logging road, and about the place where I thought I was going to come off to go to my friend's property, I start dropping down, and I'd missed a few plants. Well, I was sitting there digging, and I heard stuff falling, here and there. And I thought it was maybe acorns, because it wasn't real late in the year, but, it was the time that the acorns and stuff like that would start falling. So I'm sitting there digging, and this little pebble hits my hand. And I'm like, what in the heck's going on here? It's kind of open in there, other than an occasional laurel bush and, big stand of poplar I was in. And, I got this overwhelming feeling like, I didn't need to be there no more. Well, I come out of the mountain, and like I said, I was staying with a friend on his property, and he has this little cabin I was staying in. Well, that night, this thing or whatever it was, I guess it followed me home, because that's the whole start of the story. Ever since that day that I went on that mountain, this thing has terrorized us. I mean, it started coming, it would black out the light going across, the way I had my bed set, and in that cabin, I could see up the road to the neighbor's house and stuff. And I mean, this thing was so massive that it would just black the light out. And I'd start hearing crunches and breaks in the woods, and I'd look out, and, every once in a while I thought I would see something, just a shadow of something move, but never did really get a good view of anything for several months. Well, we had bought us an RV and put it on the other side of the creek at this time. And let me back up a second. While I was in the cabin, though, I mean, it got so bad, our dog would hide. When that thing would come around, he would run up under the bed. We had a little chihuahua named Bit. He would hide and whimper and cower, and I couldn't ever figure out what he was so afraid of outside. You know, we'd open the door to let him out, and he wouldn't even go outside. Well, I got some firecrackers from a neighbor's kid, and every time this thing would start, I started throwing these firecrackers out, and the other neighbor thought I was shooting a gun, you know. So he comes out and kind of gives me the devil over it and asks me, you know, why am I shooting? There's kids there and stuff. And I told him the story. I said, you know, there's something down here aggravating me every night. I said, I was throwing firecrackers out so that I could run this thing off, whatever it was. Well, shortly after that, before the camper deal, we were laying in bed one night, and I had a little old oil lamp burning, you know, just barely enough to see. Well, we were laying there asleep, and Tonya turns over, and the window was open, and something sounded like it was cutting the woods down. Splashed through the creek and took off and run down through the woods over here. Well, we was kind of getting scared by then. I mean, you know, we didn't have no gun or no kind of anything to protect ourselves with other than like a kitchen knife. So we was just sitting there in fear of this thing. Well, it was about October by then, and we had bought an RV and stuck it on the other side of the creek, as I was saying. Well, we were sitting here one night, and we'd got some new flashlights we were checking out, and Tonya just shines it out the window. It takes like 6 AA batteries, and it was kind of the square LED lights, you know, like that's in your phone for the flashlight. They're really super bright, and it had like 5 of those lights in it. Well, she shines it along the creek here, and standing beside the creek, there's a telephone pole. And take this in mind, I can stand beside this telephone pole, and there was a roll of wire on it, like where the phone company had left, and my head is at the bottom. Well, when she starts screaming and said something's out here, I turn around and look, and this thing's head was probably halfway up in that wire. I mean, I could go out there and stand and stick my hand up, and I'm about 6 foot tall. I could stick my hand up as far as I could, and that's about the height of this thing. And it was just massively built. But when the light hit it, it was like it knew that it messed up, you know, like it was like, oh Lord, these people just see me. So it just has this weird movement and kind of just backed down into itself on all fours like a cat and backed into the creek, and we didn't see it for a while. And that was the first time we'd ever laid eyes on it, right there.
Had you ever been to that place before the day you visited and this all started?
I had, but it'd been several years back. I've hunted that mountain 10 or 15 times in my life. You know, and like I said, my neighbor lives there, and a good friend of mine, so we'd go up through there every once in a while, you know, in the fall, ginseng hunting or squirrel hunting or something. But I'd never seen anything like that here. Never had a fear like that in the woods. I mean, I've always camped and hunted and done the outdoorsy thing. You know, that's kind of just the way of life where we live here. I've fished this river since I was a little boy and never encountered anything like this.
What do you think it was about you visiting that place that caused them to terrorize you the way they've been over the years?
Well, I think it was kind of, they were trying to find out what I was, why I was there, you know, or it was just basically a territorial thing. Because they had the whole bottom of that mountain within 100 yards from the houses at the bottom of the bank up. That was where all their trails was. I guess they were coming through there foraging for food out of people's trash cans and so forth. I mean, you know, used to you would see a bear every once in a while, or, you know, I would jump deer on that mountain about every time we went in there. Some kind of grouse, or, you know, you would see some kind of life. And then after these things moved in within the last few years, I haven't seen any deer. The bear that usually stays up the road, she has cubs in the same place every year. She's done it for about 8 or 10 years. She don't even stay around there no more to even have her cubs or anything.
Yeah, they've been scared off, it sounds like. Before you tell us about the other encounters you've had with them, please tell us about the topography of the area where you live.
Well, the topography, there's a big line mountain that runs up the river. We're surrounded by mountains on both sides of the Highway 19E. Like I said, there's a big wide river that runs down through here called the Doe River, and it's just, you know, rocky outcrops and some cliffs and things, but mostly just big, high ridges, and they just keep running back for miles and miles. And if you go up 19E from where I'm at to the left, if that same ridge runs, it runs out to a place called Watauga Lake. We have a big lake that the TWRA made here, to produce power. And that's kind of where Hondo had his encounter, was kind of up by the lake.
Yeah, you talk about a place that sounds like it's totally ideal for dogmen to live. That must be it.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, sounds like it. All right, Kevin, please tell us about the rest of your encounters. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
Okay. Well, going back from the first time we seen it here, we were scared to death. I mean, like I said, we didn't have any way to protect ourselves or anything. And we'd seen this thing that first time. Well, we were sitting here and it kind of got into later in the year, it started snowing and things. And one night the moon was real full and there was probably about 3 inches of snow out on the ground. When Tonya would go on her cycle, these things, they would stay around. This one we call Big Daddy, he's about, between 7 and 8 feet tall, 3.5 to 4 feet wide. I mean, he's like everybody else's typical description. He's got the hawk legs. He's black, the pointed ears, a big long snout, sort of like the werewolf off the Underworld series that was locked up in the vault or whatever. He kind of looks like him, but he's black and silver. And his eyes, that one's eyes are blue. When light hits them, they're blue. Well, the one with orange eyes, I was sitting here one night, and it was kind of the same scenario with the flashlight deal. Tonya's sitting here, and we've got these other flashlights, and she's checking them out, and she shines it out, and in the same exact spot, there was something standing there. And it was kind of the same scenario, it kind of backed down and went down the creek, and she's screaming. Well, when she first seen it, I didn't see it. So I'll get my flashlight out. It's like a spotlight, that you can focus in really good. I start shining it down through the creek here. It's in front of our RV, and about, 75, 80 yards, I see these orange eyes coming. They come out beside the creek, and it comes up, and it goes back into the thick stuff, and then it comes back out, and there's some logs laying in the creek, like where they'd made a stepping place across it. This thing comes across, and I'm sitting here watching it with that light, and all I can see is black and its eyes shining. I mean, it gets within 30 yards of my place here, and I'm sitting there, and I seen a cat run down the road. So when I seen it, I said, kitty, 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 and it looked straight up at me, kind of locked eyes with me. And its eyes were orange as a cigarette in the night, just like a burning amber when the light hit it. Well, it's like its fur absorbed the light or whatever, because I could see the grass around it, but all I could see of it was a black mass and those two burning orange eyes. And when I said kitty, 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 it just disappeared into the grass. Well, I'm sitting here, the next day comes, I get out and I walk down by the creek here and I find this circle that was probably about 8 foot in diameter that had been wallowed out. And apparently that thing, when I said that to it or, spoke, it just laid down right there and made a bed more or less. Well, we used to sleep with the door open in the summertime, where it would get hot and whatnot. And I was laying up in the top above the cab, and I just woke up one night, probably about 3 o'clock in the morning. I was dead sleeping. I just had this feeling like something was watching me. Well, I turn over and look down at the door, and here's this face in my door that it was just surreal. It was black skin, you could see the black skin, a short muzzle. It didn't look like the other one. And it has these big wide pointed ears on it. It was solid black, and the best way I could describe it, it kind of looked like the face of a bat in a way. And before I knew it, no sound, no nothing. It was just gone. Our driveway is gravel, but it's been packed down over the years where it's dirt and mud and everything washed off the bank where we've had grade work and stuff done. It was just silent. So I get up and I lock the door, and ever since then, I don't sleep with my door open or a window that's close to the ground. If it's off the ground 8 or 10 feet, I'll leave that open. In my heart, I know that if they wanted to get in, they could just tear the wall out, or, they could get us if they wanted us. As long as we've been seeing these things, we've never been attacked, but we've just been scared to death by them, And, we'd be laying in the bed and wake up, and shine a light or turn the light on, and you could see the orange eyes or the blue eyes looking in the windows. I've encountered that several times and have to wake Tonya up and get her up to come up in the top bed with me because they'd be sitting there watching us sleep. It's tore the pipes out from under our RV. I mean, we'd wake up, and the camper would be shaking and wake up out of a dead sleep, and it'd be rocking like something was just tearing the side out of it. And hear this growling, like everybody else has kind of explained, a deep, guttural, bassy growl, It would kind of just shake your chest, when you'd hear it. And several of our neighbors have came out and asked us if we've seen or heard anything, We have one neighbor, she's a retired highway patrol officer. She caught us walking one day and came out, and she's like, have y'all ever seen anything or heard anything around here? She said, my dog goes crazy, and I keep hearing stuff, and I think I see something out here, but I'm not sure because it's like it moves so fast I can't, really get a glimpse of it. Well, we kind of reconciled with her and told her, you're not crazy. We have seen things around here, and I don't want you to think we're crazy. So we just kind of left it at that with her and told her, just to be careful not walk at night. And another thing that's really interesting is there's a graveyard right behind our house. And it seems like a lot of rivers, graveyards, any kind of bodies of water, a lot of people encounter these things. And I thought that was just an interesting factor in it, hearing all those reports where people see them around graveyards or in water. It's just really interesting. But everything around here, all the small game in this area, there's none left. All the groundhogs and rabbits and things like that, that used to be out here and we'd watch in abundance, is just been eradicated. Well, we'll get out and walk by the river and stuff, and I've been stopped probably 5 to 8 times. People asking me if I've seen a small dog, a basset hound, or a chihuahua, or somebody's cat was missing, have we seen this or that? And that's been another problem around here. And, I didn't really want to speak out and say, yeah, I know what's getting them, because people think that it's bears and all this stuff, but like I was telling you, there's hardly no big game left around here. Well, one day we were walking up by the river, and it's an old train track that goes up that they had taken out, but there's still an old road that goes up where you can kind of drop off and you can go fishing. There was an old building there that was laid up to rock, like back in the 1800s, where they had smelted iron and stuff, and they would, I guess, load it into the cars and move it and do their trading or whatever. And I'd never noticed this hole before, so we're walking up through there and drop off the bank to go fishing, and there's like a 4-foot in diameter hole dug out under the foundation of this old rock building. And I kind of had the idea that was kind of where their den was. Well, you go on up the river a little ways, and there's a cut that goes through the mountain, like a tunnel. And right on top of that ridge, we had some neighbor kids that we walk with and associate with. We're really good friends with, that we take out on hikes and stuff. We hiked on top of this ridge, and you know how a dog, it'll sit when it starts to lay down, they'll usually walk in a circle, and then they'll lay down in the middle of wherever they're circling. Well, it was the same thing up there. There was like 3 or 4 big spots. It looked like they'd just been wallowed out and stepped in a circle, and it's like a bedding area. And if you look off the right side, you can see up the road all the way up beside the 4-lane, plumb up the river, like probably a half a mile you can see. And if you look down the other side of the ridge, you can see all the way back down here to the bottom where I'm at. And I think that was kind of a hunting vantage point for these things. They can see people coming up through there, or animals, anything that's walking that trail, they can see it and not even be seen because they're kind of out of their line of sight. They're way up higher than you are, and you'd never even know they were there, or the animal, and they could get it pretty easy. And getting back to another sighting I had, it was kind of the same scenario as the snow and the full moon. It was one of those nights again. It's kind of maybe in January or February. We were sitting here in the same house that I told you in the last story. I seen something come out, and I get to watching real close. And you know how a doe, when they come out in the field, if they've got fawns, they'll come out and they'll check everything out, and they'll look around, and they'll stomp, and they'll kind of look back to the woods or wherever their babies are, and then they'll keep on proceeding their direction, and the babies will follow. Well, it was kind of a scenario like that. This thing come out. It walks about 30 yards, I'd say, out in this guy's yard that I can see. And it stands there a second, and it turns around back toward the woods, and it keeps on walking. Well, within a few minutes later, the smaller one comes out. And they just go over toward the left side of the guy's house where I think the trash cans or whatever may be. And they fumble around there, and they walk on off the bank. Well, I was telling you about that one looking at me in my camper. I think it was that small one, because it was from the height and where its face was in the door. You know, it was too small to be one of the bigger ones. We've seen 3 here. There's 2 solid black ones, and then the big one, he's black, and he's got like a silvery gray to his abdomen down to his feet. His bottom of his legs is kind of silvery gray looking. And we've had another neighbor that they moved in and was renting a house down here on the same property that we live on. Well, she kept thinking that someone was out here. You know, she'd see something run through the yard, and she said, I pulled in one night, and my wife was sick, and she was in the bed. And when I rounded the curve here across the creek, there's a little bridge. The big one was back here in the back, right behind my camper. It was on all fours down. You know, I've seen him so much, I know the difference in him. Where he was silvery gray, I seen that on his rump and then his legs. And just as soon as my lights hit him, he was gone up through this thicket. Well, I pull on down and take the neighbor's husband back home, and she's like, there's someone out here. And I was like, I'm telling you, it's not someone, it's these things that I've been telling you about. She said, no, it was standing up and it ran through the yard. I was like, I'm telling you. I said, what color was it? And she was like, it wasn't it. It was somebody. I said, well, what color was their clothes or whatever that you've seen? She said it looked like they had a black jacket on. They were blacked out up top and had, you know, light colored pants on, you know, white or whatever. I told her husband, I said, what did I just tell you that I seen right when we rounded the curve? And he was like, oh man. So this guy gets super scared. He gets his knives out, you know, because he doesn't own a gun either. And he won't even come outside past dark to feed his dogs or anything after he's seen this thing. Well, the other neighbors' kids that used to live here, they'd walk down, you know, the same ones I told you I took hiking and camping and stuff. They walked down and they experienced this thing up in the neighbor's yard. They rounded this corner of this building, and it was standing behind a tree over in the yard and scared them to death, so they won't even walk through the yard no more. You know, said it made out this horrible growling sound that they'd never heard anything like before in their life. It was like within 30 yards of them. But like I said, it never does attack anybody. It just scares you to death. You know, it'll bluff charge like it's going to take a few steps. And when you take off, I mean, it's gone. It's been really, really crazy. And another time that I'd seen the big one, I had a buddy, he was going to a divorce, and we were sitting out here at the end of the road, and we were talking one night, and it was probably 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and we still lived in a little cabin across the creek over here at that time. And I see this black figure. I mean, it's moving super fast, man. I mean, I've never seen anything move so fast that was awkward looking. You know, it kind of looks like a bear, but it's a little higher in the front than it was in the back. And this thing, it just runs up on the neighbor's porch, and there's some cat food there, and it sniffing around, and it just takes off and goes back down toward that cabin I was telling you we lived in. Well, Tonya was down there by herself at that time, and she was like, Kevin, she said, there's something, sounded like it was galloping like a horse down through here. She said, I heard it, but I never did see anything, you know. When it took off by that car, I ran down through there, down the road, to check on her, and she was telling me this, and there's really nowhere for it to go. I mean, it's a little pie-shaped wooded area. If you cross the creek, it's a real big thicket of briars and, you know, like small locust trees growed up with big thorns and stuff on them. And this thing just disappeared. And I got to talking to that neighbor, and she said these 2 big black somethings come across, and she watched them for all I can play around this rocky outcrop that's on the mountain that you could see, you know, when the leaves are off. And she goes inside to get her binoculars and comes back out, and she kind of loses track of them. You know, she couldn't find them no more. But the last few encounters that we've had with these things, it's just been in passing. We'll be sitting here in the vehicle, we'll pull in at night, and they run through the driveway, or they'll be at the neighbors, in this wooded area. They'll cross over and go up to the other neighbor that's asking us if we'd seen anything, the highway patrol lady. And they just terrorize everybody through here. I mean, there's several people that seen them, but only a handful will even say anything to you. They don't want to sound like they're crazy. But over here at the river, they have perfect access to everything down through here. I mean, they can go plumb up the river. Like I said, there's a strip of trees that runs behind all the houses right through here. And it's probably a quarter to half a mile. And it goes up and they can cross the river and hit a ridge, and they can go straight to the lake, or they can go out toward a place that's called Gap Creek here and never be seen by anybody. And like I said, this little creek we live on, it used to be full of muskrats and, small game. You'd see rabbits and possums and coons here every so often. There was a bunch of cats down here because the lady that lived down here before we moved in, she had a bunch of cats, and when she left, she just left them. Well, all those cats are gone except for maybe one or two. And the way this thing moves, when we first started experiencing it, all the dogs in the neighborhood, they would just cower down. It would be dead silent. I mean, you could hear a pin drop. And these ones beside of us, they would just whimper and cower, and they would be quiet. And usually those are the little chihuahuas and stuff like that. They'd sit and bark at anything. If a leaf fell out of a tree, they was barking at it all night long. I mean, would keep us up and keep us up. And when these things moved in, the dogs quit barking. Those did anyway. Well, now, I guess where everything's so accustomed to them moving down here, I can hear when they're coming, because the dog way up the river, he'll start barking, and then it's just a slow progression. Every dog in the neighborhood will just start sounding off till they get down here close to us, and I know that they're around, They move right at dusky dark, right after dark, and right before the sun comes up, it's like they're gone. I mean, they'll come out here and we'll see them and be aggravating and scaring us to death. And like I said, 30 minutes before daylight, right before the sun comes up, they're gone. But the most traumatizing thing is, like when we seen these two out here, when you see them up close, I mean, it's something that you don't get over. I mean, my wife, she wakes up sometimes still, she'll be in the middle of sleeping and scream no and wake up, and I'll ask her, but Tonya, what's wrong? It was like looking at those things' eyes again. I just can't, it does something to you. She's seen it closer than I have, because she woke up one night and it was staring in the window, and she's seen it face to face, and the only thing that was between her and it was a pane of glass. It's really took a toll on her. She won't hardly go fishing with me around here. She won't go in the woods hardly no more. She don't enjoy camping. She won't do anything as far as being outdoor activities unless it's at a residence or somewhere here close where she can stay. We used to enjoy going to the mountains and ginseng hunting and just hiking and taking those kids fishing different places, through the mountains and the waterfalls and things, and we don't even do that no more. Every time we get out, she's afraid that she's going to see something, and she gets these uneasy feelings all the time. It's just been hard. It's harder for me dealing with her than it is to actually see it. I mean, after a while, I got to thinking, if they were going to hurt us, they would have done it before now, because they would have caught us walking down the driveway or something, and they've been here, and when they start growling and stuff in these thick places that's around here, if they wanted us, they could have had us right there. But it's just, I think it's more of a mental game to them. What's really crazy is, like, when I see this thing walking out the mountain at that house up there, if we focus in on it, I tell Tonya, I'm like, look, it's coming out. You can watch it right there. It's sort of like I don't know if they're on a different level, or they can sense people looking at them, or just have a sixth sense about them. But it's almost like they can tell, that thing will stop, and it knows that we're watching it. It'll veer off and go back into the woods. And I was out here in the driveway one time, and it rained. This is when we was having a lot of activity. When it first started, it was really, really bad. I mean, these things were around every night. They aggravated us. I mean, they'd be where we were staying over in that wooded area. Like I said, I'd hear stuff breaking. They would be in our pots and pans outside. Like if we cooked on a fire or grilled out that night, they would be out there, the grill would fall over. We'd hear stuff all night long, and you get up and look out. It's like when they heard the first little inkling of sound that they were gone, they just disappear. it's just been difficult dealing with them. The last experience that I can recall, this was about a month and a half ago. I was at one of our, the guy that owns the property that we stay on and we rent from. I was at his house. The woods where we live now, that's on the property where we stay, there's some roads that kind of intersect out through here, and he lives up more toward the 4-lane part, 19E. Well, the little woods here, you can come out by the river. You have to cross the road once, and you hit a thick, like a 20-foot strip of woods, but it's real thick that they can move through, right? Well, it goes up and it broadens out like a pie shape, and it gets broad and it goes plumb to another road. Well, that little road cuts down behind the church, and all you have to do is hop that road, and there's another patch of woods. Well, that patch of woods, you go out probably 150 yards or so, and you just go up on top of the hill, and you're right at his other property. We were sitting out there that last time, and there's a graveyard there also. He goes out to get something out of his truck. He come back in, he said, "Gosh, Kevin," he said, "I thought you were pulling my leg, because I told him about him." He just kind of laughed it off and told me he'd smelled the smell, because I was telling him it smells like rotten meat and like an old dog or a goat smell with pee on top of it, and he just laughed it off. Well, he was up there and he said, "I seen it, Kevin." He said, "I seen it." He said it was standing up. He come out beside my barn, walked all the way around the fence of the graveyard and went back down in the woods, and it was walking bipedally. He said it was probably about 7 foot tall or so, and it was brown. Well, I'd never seen a brown one here. The only ones, like I told you, I seen, they was black, and then that one was silver on it. Well, this was like 20 minutes later. We go out there, and I'm looking with him and stuff and see if we can find any tracks or see anything else. And it's all grassy through there, so apparently there wasn't no tracks or anything. Well, it was getting dark about that time, so I go ahead and I pull down here at my place. And I pull off the road, and I seen something go across the driveway kind of. I flip my headlights on, hit bright on, and here's this thing standing in the road. It takes off running up the hill and runs toward the highway patrol lady's house. And it was brown. It didn't have the big snout like the other ones, It was, I don't know, it was more of a puggy looking face on this one. And I really didn't catch the ears on it, but it was so fast that I really couldn't focus in and tell you every detail about that thing. But the ones I've seen here close, everybody describes this thing to a T, except the small one that I've seen. Like I told you, it looks more like a bat in the face. It's got that smushed in snout, and it's got real wide, high pointed ears on it, and I seen that black skin around it, and its eyes were just, I don't know, it just, when I looked at its face, it just a moment of dread to me, It's like it was pulling my soul out. I don't know, I just felt so weird, and that thing, then it was gone within a second. But that was the most recent experience that I'd had with them. It's probably in the last month or so, actually physically seeing one. And they just keep getting braver. When all this first started, like I told you, it was probably 4 months before I even really, really laid my eyes on this thing. And like I said, it was at that phone pole across the creek there. And when we shined the light on it, it was like something off a horror film. Everybody says about like Bad Moon and Blood Moon and all this stuff. Well, this thing, like I was telling you, I think it looks more like that one off of the Underworld movie that took out the vault. It's got that long face, the big one does, anyway. He's solid black, but he's more muscular, more robust than that one off the movie. More barrel-chested, big. It's creepy how their arms look. They're just the way they hang down below their knees. They're just like everybody else says too. Their bicep part looks normal, then their forearm is just out of proportion to their body. And the black claws and the pocked legs. I used to be skeptical of everything like that and didn't believe in Bigfoot because I'd always been out in the woods my whole life. Since I was a young boy, I started squirrel hunting when I was like 8 or 9 years old. My grandpa took me for the first time. And I've never experienced anything like this. And my grandpa, he even worked for the Forestry Service for years, clearing out roads and doing stuff like that. And if he did see anything or knew anything, he didn't say nothing to us. I guess he'd have to keep that hush-hush, sort of like a game ranger or game warden would do. they'd let you know without letting you know, not to go in there. He'd just tell me certain spots to stay out of, not to go there.
You said your problems with him have been ramping up. Have you thought about moving out of the area?
Well, I have, but, I'd been diagnosed with cancer a few years ago, and my health has just went all to pieces. And with the financial burden that we've had and situation, it's really not feasible for us right now. I really don't have the funds to do it. And at first, when I first started encountering them, I wanted to get out of here. My old lady, she wanted to kick rocks and go somewhere else. But, like I said, with all the financial struggle we'd been going through at the time with my health and what it costs and all that, it just wasn't feasible. So we've just had to stick it out. And like I said, I know if they wanted us, it's as simple as pushing their hand through a piece of glass and dragging us out, like the LBL story back in 1982. I mean, if they wanted you, they'd get you. They'll tear the door off of it, But I think they have more intellect to them. They're trying to figure out what we're doing, what's going on with us, and why we were there. We used to walk that path, too, that I was telling you about, by the guy that owns the property. And I think that's why they would follow us, is the scent. Where we would walk, they would kind of follow us and see where we were going. Because it was just weird that all of a sudden they were up there, and he sees one in the backyard. I just thought that was crazy.
It really is a shame. Here you and Tonya live in this beautiful place, and you love the outdoors to boot, but you can't enjoy yourselves out there because of all these dogmen out there terrorizing you. That's a shame.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it just takes the fulfillment out of life. Knowing that these things are out here, and if you go on the mountain or you go anywhere around this area, like a wolf, it'll have like a 30 to 50 mile radius that thing will travel in a day. So you can imagine these things that big. And like I said, they've killed all the game around here out. So the path that they actually go just to find something to eat. And have you ever been to West Virginia, Vic? How those little hills and mountains, I mean, it's, you'll be driving through just a valley and there's stores on the side of the roads and stuff, and it's just in an unpeculiar place. You wouldn't even think there would be anything there. That's kind of the way it is in this little area we live in. I mean, it's just hills and hills, and you'll find a little flat valley spot, and, you'll find a little residential area, and these things, I mean, they can go over any of these ridges and be within a 10-mile radius. They can be where Hondo had his encounter, or they could be plumb to Johnson City, Tennessee, Rome Mountain. I mean, it's all, the mountains just run through here, and there's places they could go and not even be seen. We have a Pond Mountain wilderness area beside Watauga Lake. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of acres in there that goes between North Carolina and Tennessee. It's just like a big triangle and never be seen. But my cousin, back when we were kids, he said him and a few of his friends went camping on this place called Dennis Cove. It's like an over mountain road that you can ride, and it goes up by the lake, and you can go across into North Carolina. There's 2 or 3 outlets to it once you go in from the side in Carter County here. It's called Hampton. They were camping at this spot they called the Little Dam. It's a waterfall, and they, all the kids back in that time, we'd get together and we'd go up there and we'd dam the creek off and have a big swimming hole, a big place to swim. Well, they were camping there, and he said that these werewolf things come out, and there was like 7 or 8 of them, surrounded them. And him and his friends, like I said, there were 7 or 8 of them also. And so they sat back to back and just fed the fire all night, and said you'd see their eyes in the shadows, and they'd break trees off and growl and make these noises. And before daylight, they were gone. Well, they didn't even pack their stuff up, actually. They left their tents and everything. They took off and left it. And I always thought, I laughed it off and thought he was, just full of it. Man, I said, there's no way you could see something like that. You know what I'm saying? No way. And, like I said, about 20 years later here, I see them right here close to where we live. The same thing he described to me back when we were teenagers. In this area we live in, Destination America done a show on the Tennessee Wild Man. I don't know if that was a Dogman mistaken for Sasquatch or whatever. But, I mean, there's documentaries of this kind of stuff all around here, and the big thing is the Appalachian Trail comes right through here where we live. Within 3 miles of where I live, I can go up the road here past where I told you the double bridges, the place we call double bridges there. go up on that ridge and you can hit the Appalachian Trail and go plumb across around the lake on the backside. And when you hit the top of the mountain, you're right there where Hondo had his experience on episode 130. I mean, these things are here, and it's just been dreadful. And you never know. I mean, their area is so big. You know, if we go to Rome Mountain or go to into the eastern part of North Carolina and go to the waterfalls, I mean, that's just right across a couple of ridges, and you can be right back here where we're at. And those things will never be seen.
You just mentioned Hondo. You say you won't go into the area where you had the encounter you talked about in episode 130. Why is that?
Well, we live so close to him, I know. See, I've hunted that mountain too. That's part of Holston Mountain. You know, the Holston Mountain Trail goes all the way out there and hits the Appalachian Trail right where he had his experience. Well, I just know they're there. When I was listening to your Dogman Encounters radio when we first experienced it, when I was going through and I found that episode with Hondo on it. And like I said, I'd hunted that mountain before, but I always had this overwhelming feeling of dread up there. I mean, like just something was watching you and you couldn't never shake it. And there's some places that's absolutely beautiful through there. And, you know, when you ginseng hunt, you're looking for deep, green, lush places to hunt for the herbs, you know. That's where ginseng grows, on usually the north-facing side of the mountain. And since I heard that those things were there, I mean, I'm just afraid because the places you have to go will be so deep back in the mountains to actually find something that's worth going after. You know, you've got 4 or 5 hours invested one way, and then you're hunting and digging if you find a good spot, you know, and by the time you're coming out, you're usually walking at dark. You know, and I'm just afraid of being out in the mountains at dark now. You know, these things they could be in a shadow and you can't see them. I mean, they blend. You know, I've seen pictures and seen things where people's been walking through the woods and, you know, apparently caught something on a trail cam or they're like their GoPro and didn't even know it was there 30 yards from them in a thick spot of the woods. I mean, if that thing wanted you at any time, it could be on you and you'd be a 411 case, you know, just disappear and nobody even know where you was at.
Yeah, there's nothing you could do to stop that. You said one of them tried to open the door of your camper one night. Was the door locked when they tried to do that?
Yeah, actually it was. My wife was home alone. And she said that she heard someone running through the gravel and it come up and the door was actually locked that night because that was after then, you know, I seen that one staring in the door at me. And I always keep the door locked at night. Until she hears my vehicle come home, she won't unlock the doors. It runs up and actually pulled on the door 3 or 4 times. And just luckily it was locked, or it would have been in the house with her.
Well, a lot of the time they'll do that and they'll jiggle a doorknob, even ones that aren't locked. I think they're just doing things like that to try and terrorize you.
Right, it's just a mental game to them.
Pretty much, because like you said just a bit ago, if they wanted to, they could always break windows and come in, or tear a door out of the hole. They could come right through the wall if they wanted to get in, but they don't.
Yeah, they could. I just thought my experience is a little different from everybody else's where I've kind of seen this family. I think it's a family group. I think that they came down here, you know, away from their norm to raise that small one or to learn it, you know, to have puppies or whatever they do, however they reproduce. Because like I said, you know, I've seen that one with that small one and I've seen it 4 or 5 times. It's about 5 to 6 feet tall when it stands up. It's not as big and massive as the other, and it was kind of lanky, you know, when we first started seeing it. But then again, that may be the brown one that I've seen, you know. It may be like a pup as they grow, you know, how their fur changes colors and stuff, and they grow into their feet and their ears and all that. It may be a situation like that. That may be the brown one now that we seen down here just a couple months ago, and he's grown now.
You said that the dogmen that you've seen might be a family, but listening to you describe them, it sounds like there's a pretty good variance in how they all look.
Yeah, now, the 2 big ones, they kind of look similar. But the smaller one, like I said, it had more of a short, puggy muzzle on it. And its ears look wider than the other ones. Because I seen it within 5 feet. I mean, like I said, I looked straight down and it was sitting there staring at me. And I lost my breath at that time. I didn't know what to do. And when it was gone, I jumped down and I immediately shut the door and I got a flashlight out, you know, and was looking out the windows and didn't even see nothing. But I don't know how their genetics, you know, how that changes in their genetics if they would variate that much. I mean, as far as their stature, the way they're built, it's all the same. They got the backwards legs and all that, but the only thing that was really different in the small one was the way its face was made. It was just less pronounced than the two larger ones. And like I said, I don't know if it was like that because it was a pup or, you know, small or whatever and hadn't grown into itself yet or what.
Well, since I haven't seen that one, it's hard to say. It's anyone's guess.
Right.
Would you say the encounter you and Tonya had where you were in the tent that night was your most unsettling one?
Yes, that would have to be the most unsettling one. She wakes me up 3 o'clock or so in the morning, Kevin, there's something out here. And I'm like, Tonya, that's just a squirrel or a raccoon or a possum or something, you know, where there's water around. I said, just go back to sleep. And she said, no. I mean, I sat there and as I got my bearings, everything was dead silent. I mean, it was just weird. And she finds this flashlight in the tent there and she's shining it back and forth and she thinks she sees something. She comes back to it and it's gone. It was kind of up in a tree just a little ways. Well, I didn't ever hear anything move off or anything like that. No sounds, no footsteps, no anything. Well, within like 10 minutes or so, the crickets start chirping and the frogs come back. And about, I don't know, maybe 100 yards or so from where we were down on this ridge, there was this squall. I mean, I've heard it on Gap Creek years before, and I heard it then, so I know what it is now. It has to be, you know, these things can just go out this ridge, and it's right there where we lived on Gap Creek before. But it made this sound that I've never heard anything else. I couldn't even describe it. It was kind of like on those Howling movies when those people were morphing into werewolves. You know, that's a bad reference, you know, to me anyway, but when they were between person and animal, how that mixed sound kind of sound, and when they screamed or howled or squalled, whatever you want to call it, that sound, it was just eerie. I got up, I got her out of there, and I actually went to my neighbor's house, and they were in the bed, and I just went there and laid on their couch. It scared us so bad. It scared me so bad when I heard that sound.
Oh, I bet it did. Yeah, it's bad enough when you're in your own home and have an encounter, you look out the window and there's one standing right there, but yeah, if you're in a tent and you've got one right there by you, yeah, that really ramps it up to a whole new level.
Yeah, it does. We had no protection there. I mean, all they had to do is reach down and grab you, you know, come out of that thick stuff, and it had you right there.
Oh, there's no doubt. From what I understand, game wardens have posted a lot of signs in your area that you think are due to Dogman activity. What is it about those signs that makes you think that?
Well, the reason I think it's a Dogman activity is because of the closeness and proximity. You know, we're seeing these things right here, and like I was telling you, they can go up the river right here 1,000 yards and hit another ridge, and they're right there on the lake. And something that can move that fast, probably within 10 minutes, it could be in that vicinity of where those postings were. You know, and used to, they'd let you camp through there and do whatever. I mean, people hiked and camped, and we had rope swings and stuff on that side of the lake. It's called Oliver Hollow. Well, people would leave, and they'd come back, and their tents were all tore all to pieces. You know, they'd be shredded, or all their food and stuff would be thrown out. Their belongings would be scattered out on the ground. And I'm thinking that somebody had to report it, so somebody's had to see something. Because usually the game wardens, I mean, they get out here, but they're not like they are in North Carolina and other places. They don't actually just get out in the mountains, and they'll walk and hike for 20 miles just to be doing it to see if anybody's in there, you know. But like I said, everybody that camps there, they're having problems with their stuff being torn all to pieces, or they'll hear stuff and they've got run out of there. And my whole life of living here in this area, I've never seen or heard anything like that about that area being posted, saying that there was bear activity, not to be camping in there. You know, it was for daytime use only, was another thing that was kind of off the beat. Because most people that camp and stuff, you know, it don't matter. It's like anywhere, you know, you just find a nice little spot and you set up and you're close to the lake and you're looking at all that view and stuff. You know, there's not a whole lot of things around here that can bother you. You know, usually a bear, you can run that stuff off. Because I've walked up on bears and big game my whole life. And most of the time you can bluff them or yell or something, and they'll just look at you and go on, or they'll take off real fast because they're scared as you are of them, you know. But whatever's up there has been terrorizing them people for them to post that.
Yeah, that just might be what's behind them posting those signs. I wouldn't be surprised. You've compared the variances in their appearance, but is there much of a variance in behavior between the dogmen you've seen?
Well, mostly the one that I've seen has been the big one, the one with silver on him. He's the one that's most dominant. I guess he's the dominant one. He was the one that I was telling you about, like women have their cycle. That's when he would come, and that's the one that shook our camper and tore the pipes off and things. And the little one, it's kind of curious. The one that stays with the little one, I haven't really seen it a whole lot. But usually when you see the small one, it's there close, you'll get a glimpse of something here and there. But that little one's more curious, per se. It's more trying to figure out what's going on, I guess, where it's adolescence. Well, he could have got right in that night. I mean, the door was wide open. The only thing that was between me and him was this piece of screen. Like I said, I think he was just watching to see. He was just curious. Because as soon as I rolled over and he seen me, we locked eyes, he was gone that fast. I mean, within a blink of an eye, he was gone. And these things are silent. I just can't believe how silent they are. They can move through this thick stuff and you'd never even know they were there. So that's the wild thing about it.
It's pretty unnerving to think that something so big and so potentially dangerous could be so silent. You and Tonya have been listening to the show for almost 3 years now, Kevin. Why'd you wait so long to share your encounters with me?
Well, actually, I tried once before when we first found your show. And my submission, I thought it went through and it didn't. And I got to thinking when it didn't, I was kind of relieved because I was kind of scared, to tell anybody or be ridiculed by people. You know what I'm saying about how people are about this kind of thing. It's a real touchy subject. And most people you try to explain it to, it don't matter how much you swear on good Lord or whatever, they just kind of laugh it off until they experience something themselves, And I was just kind of afraid, man. To be honest with you, didn't want to be ridiculed and be put in a crazy house.
Well, I can appreciate that, but I'm sure even back then you realized that to contact me doesn't necessarily mean you had to come on the show. I mean, like I've said before, most of the people I speak with about their encounters, they don't have any interest at all in coming on the show. And for the people who do want to share their encounters but don't want to be ridiculed, like I've said before too, there's always an option to digitally alter your voice so even your own mother wouldn't recognize you, and also give you an alternate name. But time after time, my witnesses will eventually come forward and share their experiences with me and tell me, well, I wanted to do this years ago, but I was afraid of being ridiculed, or I was afraid of this or that. Or there are things in place to guarantee that that's not going to happen. And also, too, I'm sure they all realize that I'm not going to ridicule you or them, so it really is a safe way to share experiences. And I hope if there's someone out there listening to this show who wants to come forward and share their experience with me, again, whether it's just between the two of us or if you have an interest in coming on the show and sharing it, then I just hope that they do that.
Oh, me too. This is a big thing, and there's a lot more people out here in my area I know have seen stuff, and they're just afraid to tell, because I've asked predominant people in our community that I know personally, and that's been out and they've, hunted and fished and dug seine and do things like I done when I was a kid. And, yeah, we've seen stuff, but they wouldn't go into detail about it. They'd just tell me an area and say, stay out there, or, don't be in there after dark, or whatever the scenario may be. Most of the time, it's not being there after dark. The old timers that I know told me, said, the daytime, you won't be bothered. That's your time. Said, but the nighttime is theirs. That's when they hunt and, do their predation and all that kind of thing. So just stay out of the woods after dark and you'll be safer. And if I ever did run up on anything, not to look it in the eye, kind of make myself look small and back down kindly, and just kind of get out of there. Be real slow about it. Don't take off and run or anything like that,
Well, I can understand why those old timers would think that, but yeah, there are a lot of holes in their theory about that. More encounters seem to happen during the daytime than at nighttime, so I definitely wouldn't follow that practice.
Right. Well, see, all of our encounters has been right at dark, right before dark till, like I said, early in the morning.
I definitely understand. It's about time for us to get out of here, Kevin, but before we get into your closing comments, I want to remind everyone that on Halloween night, I'm going to air a special premium member-only episode of the show. It's going to be a special 2-hour show with nothing but encounters. All right, having said that, Kevin, do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
I just would like to say, if anybody else has seen them, come out with it. Tell people, give them the areas. That way there's more people aware of where these things really are. Like I was saying, where we're in close proximity to Hondo, that gave me initiative to get my story out there and kind of tell them that they're moving through our area and they're here and they're real. This thing, it's not a joke. It's not somebody in a costume. This is real. This is a serious thing. I mean, like I said, we haven't never been hurt by it, but we've been scared to death and been shook, and it's been a mental thing. And like I said before too with Tonya, where they've taunted her, it's haunted her dreams. I mean, woke her up in the night and she'd be screaming and saying she's seeing this thing, seeing the eyes again and hearing this sound that they make, and it's just something that you can't never forget.
Oh, there's no denying that. I can only imagine what the two of you have been through, and I just hope it stops soon. Kevin, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all those experiences with us. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Vic, for having me and letting me share my experience with you.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, thanks again so much. Have a great night.
Oh, you too, Vic.
Thanks. We'll see ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye. If you've had a Dogman encounter of your own and would like to speak with me, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmenencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you.